November 2001. Life is moving on. I'm still a picture framer, just gussying up people's artwork and jerseys and whatever else they bring in to be put in a frame or a shadow box or whatever. And doing some reading. This is an odd month. Uh, I read 9 books in November of 2001, and only one of them is not part of a series. And that's the first book that I read in November of 2001, which is Bobby's Girl by J.D. Austen. This is a science fiction book. When I looked it up, because I remembered absolutely nothing about this, I got the impression it's considered comfy or cozy science fiction. Basically, you have this woman, this alien named, let's see, where's my notes? Ket. She's a general, and after a war, she's got to go into hiding, so she has surgery to make her look like a human, and she comes to Earth, and she's taken in by this family, and she meets a director. It's in Los Angeles. She meets a movie director named Bobby Albertson. After she goes to work, she's living with this old couple, and their son works in Hollywood, and he gets her a job as a script girl, is what it says in the description. She's working her way up the ladder, meets Bobby Albertson, the director, and but there's still conflict on her planet, and so people, or aliens, are looking for her. But honestly, I remember nothing about this book. But sounds like it could be a nice, simple science fiction book. Not a lot of conflict or anything, I suppose. As I said, cozy was the description I saw in one of the reviews. But that's Bobby's Girl, J.D. Austen. All right, now, everything else is part of a series. And we start with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Lost Slayer, Part 1, Prophecies by Christopher Golden. Recently, after doing my 7-part review of the Blackstone Chronicles by John Saul, regular viewer and commenter Michael Booker asked if I could think of any other serial novels aside from the Blackstone Chronicles, The Green Mile by Stephen King, Blackwater. There was another one that he mentioned, and I told him no, I couldn't think of any, and here we are. We have a 4-part serial novel that I read in November of 2001. First part, Dark Times, excuse me. So this story takes place early in season 4. Buffy is new to the college life. She hasn't met Riley yet. I'm throwing this stuff out there, assuming people know who any of these characters are. And she hasn't quite adjusted to college, whereas Willow has really adjusted to college. So Buffy's sort of out of sorts, and she is visited. Did I write down? No, I didn't. Buffy's visited by the ghost of a former Slayer. Tells her something bad is coming, and then something happens, and Buffy is suddenly in the future, where she's 24 years old, and basically vampires run Southern California, and so she's got to figure out what happened, how to get back, what she did to cause this bad future. So then, of course, I followed that up with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Lost Slayer Part 2, Dark Times, also by Christopher Golden. And, excuse me, getting a little spoilery here, but so Buffy's still in the future, 24 years old, and we learn that in the present day, Her body is occupied by somebody called the Prophet. Um, and her friends are all trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Buffy's still trying to fighting vampires in the future, trying to figure out how to get back. Her friends are trying to figure out how to save her. And I followed that with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Lost Slayer, Part 3, King of the Dead. And this is the biggest spoiler, I would say, for the whole thing. But this is where Buffy discovers mute your computer for the next 15 seconds or so if you don't want to hear this, starting nowish. Buffy discovers that Giles, her watcher, is the head vampire running everything in Southern California. Okay, we're good to go. So Buffy learns this secret. For those of you who turned off your sound, Buffy's still in the future, 24 years old. Everybody in the past still trying to figure out what's going on. How did this happen? But, things are coming to a head. And then finally, we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Lost Slayer, Part 4, Original Sins, Christopher Golden, and everything comes to a conclusion. All the different threads come together. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But serial novel, it's fun. Christopher Golden's a great writer, and he's one of the best Buffy the Vampire Slayer authors. And so this is, I would pick this up and read it again if I could find the 4 parts. Who wants a collected edition of a serial novel? I want the 4 parts. But if you're a Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, if you're a Christopher Golden fan, it's good stuff. All right. Now, after that, I read Year of the Scarab, Book 1, Heralds of the Storm by Andrew Bates. This is a World of Darkness book from White Wolf Publishing, and this first book features the Hunters, which was a newish thing in the World of Darkness. Now you could play a human character in the role-playing games, human character with some powers that hunted the monsters. And this, let's see, checking my notes here. This introduces us to Thea Gandor, who is a hunter, and she meets this guy. They seem to have the same goals, so they team up. They're doing some stuff, and this is the book. I don't think that this is much of a spoiler. I guess technically you don't find out until the end of the first book, except that it tells you on the back cover. This is the book in the World of Darkness that introduces mummies. So we've had vampires, werewolves, ghosts, or wraiths, fae folk, fairies, whatever you want to call them, mages, magic users, then hunters, humans with some abilities that help them fight all of these other creatures, and now mummies have been introduced. So, yes, Thea Gandor and her friend, whose name I didn't bother to write down, are going to be dealing with mummies. Next up, Year of the Scarab, Book 2, Lay Down with Lions by Andrew Bates. And in this one, we have a vampire named Beckett. And something's going on. He's got to deal with Thea Gandor, the hunter, but he also has to deal with typical vampire politics and all these things. But there is some other dark force. We know it's the mummies that's affecting the World of Darkness. And he teams up with a Nosferatu, which is not the name of a person or vampire. It is a vampire clan. So Beckett has teamed up with this Nosferatu to figure out what's going on. There are some betrayals. There are some revelations. And a cliffhanger. Just like the first book. Because this is a trilogy. And I followed this up with the penultimate book for November of 2001. Year of the Scarab, Book 3, Land of the Dead by Andrew Bates. And this is our conclusion. This brings everything to a head, brings all our characters together, shows us essentially what mummies mean in the World of Darkness, and how they can affect, I suppose, all the different things, the different aspects of the World of Darkness. Just in case there's anybody that doesn't know, probably should have mentioned this when I mentioned the first book of the trilogy. World of Darkness, whole massive role playing game world with all those different elements that I named earlier. This is another. If I could find these three books, I would absolutely pick them up again. The covers I absolutely love. Beautiful, beautiful artwork on the covers of these books, and I'm a big fan of mummy stories if they're done right. I think mainly because of the ancient Egyptian magical dark stuff that goes with mummy stories. Um, so yeah, this is something I would definitely pick up and read again. And then, to finish out November of 2001, the first book in a trilogy. Spoilers, I read books 2 and 3 at the beginning of December. Um, but also spoilers, I much more variety in what I read in December. But before we get to that, that's a week away. The last book I read in November of 2001 was Battletech Warrior On Guard by Michael A. Stackpole. It's the Warrior trilogy. And so, Battletech, I believe, started as a miniatures game. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it started as a miniatures game. One of those really complex miniatures games where you set up the table and you put out all of the terrain and everything, and you build your forces, and you're using tape measures and things. When you're attacking, you have to use a tape measure to make sure that your opponent was within range, and you have line of sight, and there's no blocking terrain, and uh, very, very complicated system, depending on how really deep you want to go into it. Um, but it's mechs. I love mechs. I don't know why. I should probably I shouldn't say probably. Be interested in talking to somebody who might explain why I'd like very specific things that I like, such as battle mechs, battle tech, mechs in general. Um, so anyway, it started. It was a role playing game. There are video games. I played one, absolutely loved it. I think it was Battle Tech because that's sort of a branded thing. Um, and then there's obviously books, and I believe there's comics. There's a card game. So all sorts of Battle Tech stuff. And in this world, it's very political. The books anyway. Different planets ruled by different factions, which you get a lot in tabletop and role playing games. And there may be a role playing BattleTech, but you tend to have these factions or tribes or whatever you're going to have, races in D&D, that sort of set basic parameters for what your character is going to be. So this is all a bunch of stuff just leading to BattleTech Warrior On Guard, Michael A. Stackpole. So you have the main character is Justin Allard, and he's a disgraced mech pilot who ends up essentially just a, a, a guy in a mech suit fighting in an arena. There's a planet, and it's just gladiatorial mech combat. And he's going to come up against a foe that might be better than him, but it's someone who he's fought alongside and has a bit of a history with. So there's going to be, personal conflict going on as well as mechs duking it out. And of course, with all of this, there's also lots of political maneuvering between these different factions on these different planets. It's just lots of fighting going on, whether it's actual mech battles and things or political intrigue. Michael A. Stackpole um, is a writer that I enjoy. I've read a few of his original things, but mainly his media tie-in type of stuff. And so this is the first, as I said, the first in a trilogy, the Warrior trilogy, Battletech Warrior On Guard, Michael A. Stackpole. Another series of books that whenever I'm at like half-price books, I check to see if they have any of the Battletech books that I'd like to pick up and either reread, or there's tons that I haven't read. Prefer to find some that I haven't read. But there you go. That's it. That is what I read in November of 2001. Kind of an odd month with just one book that wasn't part of a series. And I really can't think of a question for this video because I've probably asked all the Buffy the Vampire questions there are for me to ask. You know, what is there to ask besides were you a fan of the show or not? I don't really have a World of Darkness question. Are you even familiar with White Wolf Publishing and the whole World of Darkness thing, Vampire the Masquerade and all that? I suppose you could talk about that. It's a great fictional world in my opinion. So much good stuff. They've recently had the last few years had some new comics that were Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf, and I got those. I enjoyed those very much. So yeah, we got the World of Darkness, and then mechs. I think I've talked about and asked about mech type stuff before. I can't explain why I like them. Maybe it's an offshoot of my fandom of Iron Man, but it goes even bigger because you're just a pilot in a giant robot suit filled with armaments. So yeah, no specific question, but if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. And if you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, fuzzy animals, is ErikSmith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. If you're on Blue Sky, I am @ELSmith. And that's all I've got. So until next time, read more books.